What if a small act of kindness, something you did every day without thinking, was actually a test? A test that could change your entire life forever. This is the story of Sarah Chen and the man who changed everything, but not in the way anyone could have ever imagined. Let me take you back to where it all began 5 years ago. Sarah was a single mother working 2 jobs. Her son, Marcus, was only 7 years old. They lived in a tiny apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin, the stairs were broken, the roof sometimes leaked when it rained hard. Every single night, Sarah would come home exhausted. Her hands would hurt from washing dishes at the restaurant. Her back would ache from standing all day at the grocery store. But she would always do the same thing. She would pick up Marcus. She would hug him tight, and she would smile. She never let him see her cry. Marcus would ask her about his father. Sarah never spoke badly about him. She would just say that his father was far away, that he was doing what he thought was best. She would hold Marcus close and tell him that their love was enough. The truth was different. Sarah's family had been destroyed 5 years before Marcus was even born. Her father was a successful businessman who believed in helping other people. He gave loans to people who needed a chance. He trusted people too easily. One of those people was named David Morton. David was charming. He was kind. He seemed grateful for every opportunity. Sarah's father helped him build a business. He invested money. He believed in him. David became successful. Very successful. And then he stole everything. David took the money, the business, the secrets. He disappeared with millions of dollars that belonged to Sarah's family. Sarah's father tried to prove what happened. But David was smart. He had hidden his tracks too well. The police found nothing. The lawyers said there was no evidence. Sarah's father died 2 years later. The doctors said it was a heart attack. But Sarah knew the truth. Her father died from a broken heart, from losing everything he built, from betrayal by someone he trusted. Her mother never recovered either. She became sick. She spent all her money on medicine and doctors. When Sarah was just 18 years old, she lost her mother too. Sarah was alone. She had nothing. No family, no money, no future. That is when she discovered she was pregnant. Marcus came into her life, and he became her reason to keep fighting. She worked hard. She studied at night. She saved every penny. She dreamed of building a better life for her son, a life where he would never know this kind of pain. She told herself that one day she would find David Morton. She would make him answer for what he did. She would get her family's money back. She would give Marcus the life his grandmother never got to see. But that was just a dream. Years passed. Sarah was stuck in her small apartment. She was stuck in her low-paying jobs. She had no money to hire detectives. She had no connections to find this man. David Morton had vanished completely. It was like he never existed. So Sarah let the dream go. She focused on her son. That was all that mattered now. Then one winter night, everything changed. Sarah was working late at the restaurant. It was almost midnight. The kitchen was closing. Most of the staff had already left. Sarah was cleaning the last table when she heard a commotion at the door. A man was standing outside in the freezing cold. He was wearing a thin jacket. His lips were blue. His body was shaking. The manager wanted to turn him away. It was closing time. But Sarah looked at him and saw something in his eyes. She saw pain. She saw sadness. She saw someone who had nothing left. Without thinking, Sarah walked over to the door. She let him inside. She sat him down by the warm kitchen. She made him hot soup. She wrapped him in her own coat. The man's name was James. He would not tell her where he came from. He would not say where his family was. He just sat there, eating the soup and crying quietly. Sarah did not ask too many questions. She just let him be. When her shift ended, she walked James to the bus station. She gave him $30 from her pocket. Her money was so tight that she barely had enough to eat herself. But looking at him, she knew she had to help. James looked at her like no one had ever looked at her before. His eyes were full of something she could not understand. Was it gratitude? Was it recognition? Was it something else? He took the $30. He thanked her. He disappeared into the night. Sarah thought she would never see him again. But the next night, James came back to the restaurant. He was looking for her. The manager said that no one had asked about her before. Never. In all the years she worked there, no one had ever searched for her. But this man came in every night at closing time. He would ask for Sarah. When they finally talked, he told her his name was James Mitchell. He said he needed help. He said that he had nowhere to go. He said that he trusted her. Sarah agreed to let him stay in her apartment for a few nights. Just a few nights, she told herself. But something happened that she could not explain. James was different from anyone she had ever met. He listened to her stories. He asked about Marcus. He helped her son with his homework. He fixed the broken stairs in the building. He never asked for money. He never complained about the small space one night. While Marcus was sleeping, James and Sarah sat by the window and looked at the city lights. James asked her if she had any dreams. Any big dreams that she kept hidden. Sarah almost told him the truth. She almost told him about her father, about David, Morton, about the money that was stolen, about her desire for revenge. But something stopped her. She was afraid that he would think she was too broken, that her past was too ugly. Instead, she smiled and said that her only dream was to see Marcus happy and healthy. James looked at her for a long time. Then he said something that seemed strange. He said, "If I could give you anything in the world, what would it be?" Sarah did not have a good answer. She asked him why he was asking such a strange question. He just smiled and changed the subject. But from that night on, things began to change in small ways. First, a man from a law firm came to the building. He said the landlord wanted to sell the building to a new owner. The new owner was going to make serious repairs. The rent would stay the same for all current residents. The repairs would happen in the next month. Sarah thought this was a coincidence. Then, the owner of the restaurant asked to see her. He said that a wealthy investor had recently bought the restaurant. The new owner wanted to give all long-term staff members a big raise. Sarah's new salary was triple what she used to make. Sarah was shocked. She asked James if he knew anything about this. James just smiled and said that good things happened to good people over the next few months. Sarah's life began to transform. The apartment got fixed. Her job paid better. She could finally save money. She could finally think about the future without panic in her heart. And through it all, James was there. He moved from being a guest to being part of their family. Marcus started calling him Uncle James. Then he just started calling him Dad. James never corrected him 1 year after they met. James asked Sarah to marry him. He did not have a fancy ring. He did not get down on one knee. He just held her hands and asked if she wanted to spend her life with him. Sarah said yes without hesitation. They got married at a small courthouse. Just the three of them. It was the happiest day of Sarah's life. Not because of the wedding, but because for the first time, she felt like her family was complete. James was a mysterious man, but he was a good man. He loved Marcus like his own son. He made Sarah feel safe. He made her feel loved. Sarah decided that the past did not matter anymore. David Morton could stay lost forever. Her family's money could stay gone. She had something better now. She had a family. She had a home. She had hope. 2 years passed, Like a dream, Sarah was pregnant with their second child. They moved to a nicer house with a yard. Marcus was doing well in school. Life was good. Then the letter came. It arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. It had no return address. Sarah opened it and found a newspaper clipping. It showed David Morton. He was now a multi-billionaire. He owned hotels and real estate, companies all across the world, but there was a date written on the clipping in black ink. A date and 1 week below the date. There were just 3 words. He will be here. Sarah's hands shook as she held the letter. Her heart was racing. She did not understand what this meant. Who sent this letter? How did they know about David Morton? That night, she asked James about it. James was in the kitchen cooking dinner when she showed him the letter. Something changed in his face. For a moment, he looked like someone she did not recognize. Someone harder. Someone darker. He set down the knife he was holding. He took the letter from her hands. He read it without saying anything. Then he turned to her and said, "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Something that I should have told you a long time ago." Sarah felt fear rise in her chest. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when James would reveal his secret, because she always knew he had one. No one was that kind. No one was that helpful. No one helped a stranger and asked for nothing in return. James took her hand and led her to the living room. He told her to sit down. Then he began to tell her the truth. His real name was not James Mitchell. He was the son of David Morton. Sarah's world stopped. James told her that his father had abandoned him when he was just a child. His mother had loved David with all her heart, but David only loved money and power. When James was born, David decided he did not want to be a father. He left them. He started a new life with the money he had stolen from Sarah's family. Years later, when James was an adult, he discovered the truth. He discovered what his father had done, the people he had hurt, the families he had destroyed, the lives he had ruined. James felt ashamed. He felt guilty for having his father's blood in his veins. He wanted to do something to make up for it. He wanted to find every person his father had hurt and help them, but there were so many. So he did something different. He spent his entire life building his own fortune. Quietly, in the shadows, he invested in businesses. He made smart choices. He became a billionaire on his own terms. Not through stealing, not through lying, but through hard work and intelligence. Then he used his money to find his father's victims. One of his investigators found Sarah. They gave him her file, her history, everything that David had done to her family. When James read about what happened to her father and mother, he felt something break inside him. He needed to meet her. He needed to help her. So he stood outside in the cold and pretended to need help. He knew Sarah would see him. He knew she would let him inside, because that was who she was. She was kind. She was good. She was the exact opposite of his father, and then he fell in love with her. It was not part of the plan, but it happened. James said that every kind thing he did for Sarah came from a genuine place. He truly loved her. He truly loved Marcus. The money, the job changes, the repairs to the building, all of that was real, but it was also his way of trying to heal the wound his father had created. Sarah listened to all of this in silence. She did not know if she should be angry or grateful. She did not know if she should trust him or leave him. She did not know if their love was real, or if it was all part of his plan to fix his father's mistakes. But then James told her the last part of the story. He said that David Morton had finally decided to sell his company and retire. He was flying into the city in exactly 1 week, and James had a plan to make his father answer for everything he had done, with legal evidence, with documents, with proof. James had been secretly collecting evidence for 5 years. He had hired the best lawyers. He had gathered testimonies from every person his father had hurt. He had David's illegal financial records. He had everything he needed to put his father in prison for the rest of his life. But he wanted Sarah to help him. He wanted Sarah to face David and tell him what she had lost. He wanted Sarah to look her family's destroyer in the eye and make sure he understood the pain he had caused. James said, "I know this is not fair. I know I should have told you the truth from the beginning, but I also know that you want justice. I know that you want revenge. I can give you the chance to face the man who took everything from you." Sarah sat in silence for a long time. She thought about her father. She thought about her mother. She thought about all the nights she had cried alone in the dark, wondering how she would survive. She thought about the man she loved, the man who was standing in front of her, asking her to trust him one more time, and she made her choice. The next morning, Sarah called in sick to her job. James took her to his office, his real office, the one he had never shown her before. The building was in the heart of downtown. It was tall and made of glass and steel. Sarah had never imagined that James had such power, such wealth, such a big life. In his office, there were lawyers and investigators waiting. They had files and documents and evidence that was stacked so high, it looked like a small mountain. For the next week, Sarah read through everything. She read about her father's business. She read about the day David had stolen everything. She read about how her father had tried to fight back, but failed. She read about how he had eventually given up and died. She read the truth of her entire life, written on pieces of paper. It was painful. It was sad, but it was also powerful, because now she understood. This was not just about revenge. This was about justice. This was about making sure that David Morton could never hurt anyone else again. The day arrived when David's plane landed. James had arranged everything. He had hired private investigators to follow David from the airport. He had booked a meeting with his father at a fancy hotel restaurant, but he had set a trap in the restaurant. Hidden cameras were recording. Hidden microphones were recording every word. The lawyers were waiting nearby with the police. Everything was ready. James asked Sarah if she wanted to be there when he confronted his father. Sarah said yes. They arrived at the restaurant early. They waited in a private room off to the side, through a small window. Sarah could see the main dining area. She was terrified. She was nervous. She was ready. When David Morton walked into the restaurant, Sarah saw him for the first time in her life. She had never seen his face before. He had only existed in her mind as a shadow, a ghost, a villain from a story. But now he was real. He was an old man, maybe 65 or 70 years old. He was dressed in an expensive suit. He was walking like he owned the world. He sat down at a table in the center of the restaurant. James walked out to meet him. Sarah watched through the window as father and son faced each other for the first time in many years. David looked shocked. He looked confused. He looked like he did not recognize his own son. But then James opened his mouth and spoke. And everything changed. James told his father exactly who he was. He told him about his mother. He told him about the pain his abandonment had caused. He told him that he had spent the last 5 years collecting evidence of every crime, every illegal transaction, every victim that David had hurt. David's face went pale. He tried to deny it. He tried to leave. But James blocked his path. James pointed to Sarah, who was now standing in the doorway. David's entire body froze. He recognized her immediately. He knew exactly who she was. James said, "This is Sarah Chen. Her father was named Michael Chen. You destroyed his life, you stole from him. And when he could not fight anymore, he died. His daughter had to grow up alone. She had to raise a child alone. She had to live in poverty because of what you did. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He could not speak. He could not defend himself, because there was nothing to say. Everything James said was true. "What do you have to say for yourself?" James asked coldly for a moment. David seemed like he might cry. But then something else happened. He looked at his son with an expression of pure ice. He said, "You think you are better than me? You think you are some kind of hero? You are exactly like me. You are just too weak to admit it. You are trying to destroy me because you are ashamed of who you are." Those words hit James like a physical blow. But then Sarah stepped forward. She looked directly into David's eyes. She was shaking with emotion, but her voice was clear and strong. She said, "You are wrong. Your son is nothing like you. Your son is good. Your son is kind. Your son helped me when I needed help. He loved me when I was broken. He chose to be different from you. He chose to be better, and that is why you will never destroy him the way you tried to destroy my family." Then Sarah turned to James. She walked over to him and took his hand. The police walked into the restaurant. They placed handcuffs on David Morton. They read him his rights. They took him away as they were leading him out. He tried one more time to speak to his son. He said, "I am still your father. Blood is blood. You cannot escape that." James did not look at him. He just held Sarah's hand tighter, and he said, "You were never my father. You stopped being my father. The day you left, I made a choice. I chose to be better. I chose to be human. That is something you will never understand." The trial took 6 months, with all the evidence that James had collected. The case was clear. David Morton was found guilty on multiple counts. He was sentenced to life in prison. He would never see the outside world again. The money he had stolen was returned to his victims. Most of it went to Sarah and Marcus. It was enough to secure their future. It was enough to build the life that her father and mother had never got to see. But there was something more important than money. There was justice. There was closure. There was healing. 1 year after David was sent to prison, Sarah stood in front of her father's grave. She was holding the pictures of her life now. Pictures of her happy family. Pictures of her son laughing. Pictures of her and James together. She placed the pictures on the grave and said, "Dad, I did it. I made David answer for what he did. I made sure he could never hurt anyone else again. And I want you to know something. I found happiness. I found love. I found a family again. You would be so proud of Marcus. He is smart and kind, just like you were. And I am going to raise him to be better than any of us. I am going to teach him that kindness is not weakness, that love is not something to be ashamed of, that the best revenge is living a good life." Sarah left the flowers and walked away. James was waiting for her by the car. He held her close and did not say anything. Sometimes there are no words. There is just the comfort of knowing that someone is beside you, that someone loves you, that someone will never leave you 3 years later. Sarah gave birth to a second son. They named him Michael, after her father. The family was complete. Marcus was now a teenager. He had never known poverty. He had never known hunger. He had never known the kind of pain that his mother had experienced. And Sarah was grateful for that, but she was also grateful that he knew his history. She told him the story of his grandfather. She told him about his grandmother. She told him that their family had faced a great darkness, but they had survived it. And through that survival, they had become stronger. She told him about James. She told him that sometimes the person who helps you is not who you expect them to be. Sometimes the person who saves you is carrying their own pain. Sometimes, love comes in ways that seem impossible. Marcus listened to his mother and understood. He said, "So James was a hero the whole time?" Sarah smiled and said, "James was a person who made a choice. He chose to do the right thing. Even though it was hard, he chose to help, even though he could have turned away. That is what makes him a hero, not because he had money or power, but because he chose to be good." James was in the kitchen when they finished talking. He was cooking dinner. He was humming a song. He looked happy. He looked like he had finally found peace after carrying such a heavy burden for so long, years of trying to fix his father's mistakes, years of searching for his father's victims, years of learning how to live with the shame and guilt of his family's name. But it was all worth it, because he had found Sarah, because they had built a family together, because they had turned pain into purpose. They had turned revenge into justice. They had turned a story of destruction into a story of healing on a cold winter night. Just like the night when James first appeared outside that restaurant, Sarah stood by the window and looked out at the city. James came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her. He said, "Are you happy?" Sarah leaned back into him and said, "Yes, I am happy. But more than that, I am grateful." James asked her what she was grateful for. Sarah said, "I am grateful that my father never knew about David Morton's arrest. I am grateful that he never had to carry this burden. But I am also grateful that he knew me, that he knew I would survive, that he knew I would find a way to keep living even when everything was taken from me." "And what about me?" James asked softly. "What are you grateful for with me?" Sarah turned around and looked into his eyes. She said, "I am grateful that you chose to be the opposite of your father. I am grateful that you chose kindness instead of cruelty. I am grateful that you found me. I am grateful that you loved me when I was broken. And I am grateful that you gave me the chance to face my past and finally let it go." They stood together in the dark, looking out at the city lights, and in that moment, everything that had happened finally made sense. This was not a story about revenge. This was not a story about money. This was a story about the power of one person's choice to be different. This was a story about how one act of kindness can change everything. Sarah's mother had always told her that kindness was a superpower. She had told her that if you treat people with love and respect, that love and respect will come back to you in ways you cannot imagine. Sarah had never fully believed that, but now she knew it was true. Because a man had stood outside in the cold and pretended to need help. Because Sarah had seen his pain and answered his call. Because she had given him $30 when she barely had anything herself. And that simple act of kindness had led to everything. It had led to love. It had led to justice. It had led to healing. It had led to a family that was stronger than any family that had come before. This is the story of Sarah Chen and James Mitchell. This is the story of how love and kindness can overcome even the darkest past. This is the story of how one choice to be good can echo through your entire life. And if you are watching this right now, I want you to know something important. You have the same choice that James had. You have the same choice that Sarah had. You can choose to be kind. You can choose to help. You can choose to see people. You can choose to love even when it is scary. You can choose to face your past even when it hurts. You can choose to be better than your circumstances. You can choose to build a life that matters. And when you make that choice, everything changes. Not overnight, not easily, but it changes. One kind word at a time. One act of help at a time. One moment of love at a time. You become the person who changes someone's life. You become the hero of someone's story. And someone, somewhere, becomes the hero of yours. That is the truth of this story. That is the truth of all our lives. We are all waiting for someone to see us. We are all waiting for someone to help us. We are all waiting for someone to love us. And sometimes, that person is standing right in front of you. Sometimes, that person is waiting outside in the cold. Sometimes, that person is a stranger who will become your entire world. All you have to do is let them in. All you have to do is choose kindness. All you have to do is choose love. And everything changes. Sarah chose love. James chose to be different. And together, they changed everything. This is their story, but it could be your story too. If you choose it. If you let it be.